Welcome to Measurably Better Learning, the podcast built for learning and development professionals. Whether you're an instructional designer, L&D professional, or corporate leader, get ready for insights and ideas that will transform your approach to learning, training, and development. So let's dive in. Welcome to this episode of the Measurably Better Learning podcast. We are going to take on a question of gaps today. We're going to talk.
I mean, a lot of things. I mean, we should clarify our gaps.
Career gaps. What happened to that 4 years right there? We're gonna talk through gaps in the learning, training, and development space, and then we're going to talk about some ways to suss them out. Where are they, and maybe how to fill them in. You taught for a number of years, and I don't remember exactly whether this occurred to me or it was something that I read, but you know, a student passing an 85% through 13 years of education is cumulatively missing 15% of education all the time.
Every year.
And that produces a significant knowledge gap, something I had never thought of. So in the learning and training space, Miriam, particularly in the corporate setting, what do you mean when you think of a learning gap?
Yeah, I think there's really probably three different areas. So obviously you have a gap with an individual person. So there's certain skills they don't know, certain knowledge, and you can certainly have belief, attitude gaps too, right? So you can have really all three of those. We tend to think of it in terms of skills mostly, but
I
can have.
So we talk a lot about know, do, believe. Right? That's sort of our framework. You know, what do you know? What are you able to do? And then that believe, commit, piece. Like, there's lots of stuff I know. There's stuff I can do.
Exactly. So there's
because I don't really believe it.
Yes.
That's an interesting point, that there are belief gaps.
There are. And I think beyond that with the individual, then you also have gaps peer-to-peer. So, you know, within this group, within this team, this cell, whatever you want to call them, are there overarching gaps that the entire team is missing, or maybe they're strong in some areas, weak in others? And then I think even there's really another gap too, which is just simply, are there gaps in what the company as a whole, you know, I guess you tend to think of it as like they're falling behind in the industry or something like that, but it might not be that. It might be a new goal they've set for this year, and you look across the breadth of the company and there's a big gap there. And I will often say that's what happens to poor L&D teams, you know. Then it's like, we set this goal, figure out how to make it happen. So, and there we go.
Grand Canyon between where we are and where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
That gap in an individual person. I mean, right, the first thing that comes to my mind there is onboarding.
Yeah.
Right?
Certainly to start.
You have a new person, there's a bunch of things that they need to know or have skills to do or beliefs that you want them to internalize. But, you know, there's you enter this company, there's always this set onboarding thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really bothers to find out, did you master the knowledge? Maybe you took some knowledge checks.
Maybe you finished them even.
Right.
But yeah.
Did you now possess the skills?
Right.
And furthermore, have you made a commitment to behave? I think in those questions of, you know, cultural issues, leadership issues, ethical issues, sometimes legal issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are they really committed to doing what you're asking them to do? And then, like you said, you've got amongst your peers. How do you know that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the simplest, right, and sort of the routine answer would be, well, we have these learning management systems and we load some learning into them and then we see who passes, and that's legitimate. I mean, that's one way to determine at least what people know. And if we have, you know, we're designing good learning experiences, we can measure skills and we can maybe even measure beliefs a little bit. But I think, so that's one way that we're determining a gap. But yeah.
How would you measure a belief?
Yeah, that's a great question. You did not prepare me to answer that. No, it's totally fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
So that is interesting, and it's certainly not necessarily to start with a qualitative type. Quantitative type when we talk about, for example, measuring leadership skills and things like that, those are often longer term, right? Because it takes a while, and you are looking at behavior, because behavior is an indicator of attitudes and beliefs.
Yeah.
So it can take longer. It often involves measurement that is more in the form of human, like coaching.
Yeah, soft skills.
Soft skills, right? It's also involving reports. I'll say reports, but feedback from coworkers and others that are there to see. So
simulations.
Yes, absolutely.
It's always interesting to put people in a particular situation. And I think with the advent of AI, with adaptive simulators that can hear and react to what you're saying and actually challenge you in some ways. I mean, I've taken, and you have too, some courses on listening, and it's all great. You're filling out the little notebook. You've got your participant guide, facilitator's doing his or her thing. And all of a sudden then they give you cards and you
have to do it. Right.
And it was all fun. Fun, but I got it, right?
Yeah.
I got the mental construct. I get what you're trying to tell us. Putting it into practice and then forcing me in a hard conversation with a person, all of a sudden I'm realizing there's a bunch of stuff I wish I could grab that I don't have access to right now. And what we've discovered there is a gap. So all right, well, we'll come back in just a moment.
Yeah.
And we'll keep looking at gaps and how to know when you have them and some other ways to fill them.
It's a new world where every training session, every learning module, and every translated document is aligned with your company's unique goals and global ambitions. Welcome to Ingenuity, where we don't just talk about elevating your corporate learning, we make it happen. At Ingenuity, we understand the heart of your business is its people. That's why we specialize in creating custom learning solutions and translation services that are not just effective, but are designed specifically for your business's global needs. Let us show you how learning cannot be just better, but measurably better, with solutions tailored just for you. Learn more in the description below. Well, welcome back, everyone. And we just spent a significant time talking through gaps. What are learning gaps? How do we determine if we have a learning gap? What are the 3 different kinds of learning gaps? So let's think for a minute about, we have these learning gaps. We've identified them. What may we hope?
We've identified the types. It's hard to identify actual gaps.
Right.
And sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes a company looks at a plant or a division or a plant or even a team, and they're looking at performance. And then, of course, the L&D people, you all know this, they look at the L&D people going, you know what? You got a learning problem.
Yeah, fix that. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And usually there's some sort of regulation that's been sideways and so on. How do you do diagnostics on gaps? So you have a performance gap, and you're trying to discover whether that performance gap is actually caused by a learning gap. What are some of the ways that you might take a look at?
Yeah, so I think what you're really looking at there is doing a needs analysis, but specifically like a skills needs analysis. So one of the things we've done, of course, is we have this role or something, and we've determined there's gaps or people aren't fulfilling the role in the way that we would hope they were. So one of the things we like to do is break that role down, first of all, into all of the possible skills that go into that role.
Right.
And obviously you can talk to other companies, you can talk to people who you perceive to be doing that role well. Mm-hmm. But then you can break it down into skills, and you can determine where the gaps are that aren't allowing them to quite reach this behavior. It's very granular. I mean, that's very behavioral based.
Yeah. It is, and it's not there's 3 reasons potentially, maybe more, why people aren't doing what you need them to do. I didn't know.
Right. They don't have the knowledge that they need.
Right. I don't have the ability, which is the skill. And then I have the knowledge. I had, the no-do belief thing. I have the knowledge. I have the skills. I haven't really bought into your system. And knowing which one of those things is the case is really important. And I've heard you talk about this before, of And it's an AI function now,
Mm-hmm.
thankfully, right? It doesn't have to be, regression analysis or, econometric modeling.
Right.
But you can look at a person's, at an individual person's experience, their education, and some of their early on performance reviews and so on. And you can start, 9-boxing, right? So, trying to figure out where does a person fit in their performance and start saying, okay, we have this person. They've been here 2 years. They're on a high-performing team, but they are low-performing. Did we onboard them correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Did they have the knowledge? Did we actually teach them the skills? Or is there more of it's an attitudinal thing. I don't want to play that way. I don't want to be part of this.
Yeah. And I think what you said there is actually really important to think about. And I think it points to a careful needs analysis, because the danger, right, is that we make this blanket assumption about a person or a group of people, and that's very dangerous. But that we actually spend some time, like you said, trying to figure out what the real problem is, because that's the only time we can design the right solution. Because then we can do targeted interventions, right? Like, maybe it is just knowledge, in which case that's pretty easy for a learning team to work through and help. And it could be e-learning, but it could be micro-learning. It could be a conference. It could be coaching,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Level would you apply that solution?
Well, if it's
the individual or a group or
the coaching or learning, I'm sorry, like the knowledge.
Yeah. Where would you intervene? Like, we've got 10 people, 2 of them aren't.
Gotcha.
Right. You don't make the whole team.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So intervention.
Yeah, that's targeted intervention for sure, is more of like a one-to-one for that person in whatever area they need it. But as opposed to if you have a gap that's more widespread, and perhaps maybe not. So, when you start to get to belief gaps, attitude gaps, that's pretty personal. If we're talking about a skills gap across the company, we can design some e-learning. Nobody's offended. They're all just learning how to improve their skill.
But that belief thing, when it becomes systemic, most of us would agree you've got a culture.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Somewhere something bad happened in your culture and it grew like a virus.
Yep.
And you may not even be able to identify the actual root cause of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That gets a little tricky.
But you need beyond an e-learning module. Right?
Absolutely. We're talking, that's a lot of organizational development at that point, and really.
And there's always, you and I have worked with a person with a background in organizational development, always been impressed with her insights on the psychology of the organization and how learning can create a certain kind of culture, good or bad, and then that gets reinforced, good or bad, by the actions of the leaders and managers and sometimes your peers.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again to those of you who are joining us for your time today in thinking through learning gaps, and we hope that this has been helpful to you, and we look forward to our next conversation. Before we wrap up the show, if you're looking to dive deeper, we've got tons of free downloads, L&D resources, and details about upcoming webinars that you won't want to miss. They're found in the episode description. Plus, if you ever want to chat with either one of us, now's your chance. You can find links in the episode description to connect directly with Miriam or me. We're here to answer your questions and to discuss all things learning and development. And speaking of questions, we love hearing from you. Whether it's a question or a comment or a topic you're curious about, or if you just want to join the conversation, drop us a comment on your favorite social media channel. Your input shapes our shows. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. It's the best way to ensure you never miss out on our latest episode. We're excited to continue to transform learning into a measurable success with you. Until next time.